In 1959, 9 experienced hikers ventured deep into the Ural Mountains, but they never returned. Their bodies were found scattered across the snow, some half-dressed, others with strange injuries, and no clear explanation of what happened. Was it an avalanche? A secret military experiment? Or something even more sinister? The Dyatlov Pass Incident remains one of history's most chilling unsolved mysteries. Join us as we uncover the eerie details and search for the truth behind this baffling case. In January 1959, a group of 10 hikers set off on a journey into the frozen wilderness of the Ural Mountains in Soviet Russia. The expedition was led by Igor Dyatlov, an experienced hiker who had taken part in numerous demanding treks before. Alongside him were 9 others, young, eager adventurers, each one seasoned in the art of surviving the harshest conditions. Together, they were ready to conquer the treacherous terrain ahead of them. Their destination? Oderten, a remote and isolated mountain, whose very name in the local Mansi language translates ominously to "don't go there." A warning perhaps that would go ignored, but fate had other plans. Before long, one of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, began to feel unwell. Stricken with an illness that left him physically weak, Yuri was forced to turn back, abandoning the group just days into their trek. Little did he know, this would be the last time he saw his friends alive. Yuri would become the only survivor of the entire expedition. The remaining hikers, undeterred, pressed on toward their destination. They continued documenting their journey, capturing photographs of their travels and writing in their journals. Their spirits remained high, and they appeared confident in their ability to handle the demanding conditions of the Ural Mountains. They had no way of knowing that the disaster they would face was already unfolding, a deadly force that would soon take their lives. Days passed, and the group's progress remained steady. They reached a mountain pass where they set up camp for the night. But something went horribly wrong. When the hikers failed to return, a search party was dispatched, and what they found left everyone stunned and horrified. What happened to those 9 hikers remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the 20th century, one that continues to puzzle investigators, researchers, and armchair detectives to this day. On the night of February 1st, 1959, the group of hikers set up their final campsite on the eastern slope of Kholat Syakhl, a remote mountain in the Ural range. The name Kholat Syakhl, derived from the local Mansi language, translates to Dead Mountain. A chilling name perhaps, but the hikers were so close to their goal, just 10 miles away from reaching Oderten, their destination. At this point, the group had been trekking for days, pushing their limits in the harshest of conditions. They were seasoned, confident, and accustomed to the cold. But that night, something terrifying occurred, something that no one could have foreseen. It was a seemingly normal evening, with the hikers settling into their tent, perhaps preparing for the final stretch of their journey. But then, in the middle of the night, a catastrophic event struck, forcing these experienced adventurers into a panic. They cut their tent open from the inside, an action that spoke of sheer desperation. The only logical explanation was that something, or someone, had terrified them to the point where they had no choice but to flee into the freezing night. But this wasn't a mere scare. It was a life-or-death situation. With temperatures well below freezing, the hikers, despite being well prepared for such conditions, fled barefoot into the harsh, unforgiving cold. Some had left behind their shoes, jackets, and gloves, suggesting they were running from something far more terrifying than the cold itself. The panic was real, almost as though they were fleeing for their lives. The chilling truth was, none of them would survive the night. By the time the search party arrived weeks later, the hikers' bodies were found scattered across the area. Some were barefoot in the snow, others had horrific injuries, and the scene itself spoke of a sudden, unexplained panic that had gripped the group in their final moments. What could have caused such fear? What drove them to abandon all reason and face the deadly cold, instead of staying safe in their shelter? It was a question that would linger for years, and still, after all this time, we have no answers. The mystery of that night on Kolat, the Dead Mountain, remains one of the most baffling and chilling mysteries in history. Days turned into weeks, and still, no word came from the hikers. Their families, friends, and fellow adventurers grew increasingly worried. Finally, with no sign of life from the group, authorities launched a full-scale search operation in hopes of finding the missing hikers. It didn't take long for the search party to make a disturbing discovery. The hikers' tent was found on the eastern slope of Kolat, torn open from the inside. This was no ordinary campsite. This was a scene of panic. The way the tent had been slashed open suggested the group had fled in a rush, with no time to pack, no time to think. It was clear they had left in a hurry, but why? Footprints were found in the snow leading down the slope, but there was something unsettling about them. The tracks showed no signs of a struggle, no indication of an attack or any kind of violent confrontation. It seemed like they had simply walked away. But why leave the safety of their shelter, especially with such harsh conditions awaiting them? The authorities were left with more questions than answers. What had terrified them so much that they chose to run barefoot into the freezing wilderness? And who or what had forced them to act in such a desperate manner? With each passing hour, the mystery deepened. The search had just begun, and already the scene hinted at something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. As the search for the missing hikers continued, weeks passed before the first bodies were discovered. Scattered near the tree line, half-dressed, barefoot, and showing no clear signs of how they had died. These were seasoned hikers, people who had faced harsh conditions before, yet they had perished in such an inexplicable and horrifying way. 2 bodies were found near the remnants of a small fire, their hands horribly burned, as though they had desperately tried to stay warm, fighting against the elements in their final moments. But even this wasn't enough. They hadn't been able to survive the cold. As the search continued, other bodies were found buried beneath the snow, their remains scattered in odd and disturbing positions. But it wasn't just the location of the bodies that raised alarms. Some of the hikers had injuries that defied explanation. Crushed ribs, skull fractures, and most chilling of all, one hiker was found with their tongue completely missing. But perhaps the most unsettling detail was the absence of external wounds to match the severe internal trauma. How could such damage occur without any visible signs of an attack or struggle? There were no bruises, no cuts, no signs of violent confrontation that would explain the fractures and injuries. It was as if something powerful and unseen had caused this destruction. And then, a discovery that only deepened the mystery. Traces of radiation were found on some of the hikers' clothing. Radiation? In the remote wilderness of the Ural Mountains, where no one could have imagined such a thing. How did they come into contact with it? Was it an accident or something far more sinister? With each new discovery, the mystery of the Dyatlov Pass Incident grew darker. What had really happened to these hikers? What kind of force had torn their lives away so violently and left behind so many unanswered questions? Over the years, many theories have emerged. Could an avalanche have driven them from their tent in panic? Some say yes, but critics argue that there was no evidence of a slide. Others believe the Soviet military was testing secret weapons in the area, and the hikers became accidental victims. Some suspect infrasound, a low-frequency sound capable of inducing fear and disorientation, may have driven them to flee in panic. There are even whispers of yetis, government cover-ups, and extraterrestrial encounters. Multiple witnesses reported seeing strange orange orbs in the sky around the same time, fueling speculation about secret military tests or even UFOs. But which, if any, is the truth? The official Soviet investigation reached a baffling conclusion. They determined that the hikers' deaths were caused by an unknown compelling force. But what does that even mean? What kind of force could leave behind crushed bones, missing body parts, and unexplained radiation? For decades, theories swirled. Was it a military experiment gone wrong? A violent confrontation? Something even stranger? Then, in 2019, Russian authorities reopened the case, searching for answers once again. Their conclusion? An avalanche, though not an ordinary one. They proposed that a rare type of slab avalanche triggered by shifting snow layers could have forced the hikers to cut open their tent and flee into the deadly cold. This theory suggested that heavy blocks of snow collapsed onto the hikers, causing the bizarre injuries seen in some of the bodies. But even with this new explanation, many experts remain unconvinced. Could an avalanche truly account for everything? The missing tongue, the traces of radiation, the eerie details that make this case so disturbing? Or is the truth still buried beneath the snow, waiting to be uncovered? The Dyatlov Pass Incident remains one of history's most chilling and unexplained mysteries. And even today, the questions continue. Today, Dyatlov Pass remains a place of mystery and intrigue. Every year, researchers, conspiracy theorists, and adventure seekers visit the site, hoping to find new clues. But perhaps the truth was buried in the snow along with the hikers, never to be fully uncovered. What do you think happened that night in Dyatlov Pass? Let us know your theories in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more unsolved mysteries. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.